The silver photo frame hit the hardwood floor with a crash that echoed through Gavin Parker's silent apartment. He stood frozen, staring at the scattered glass surrounding the image of Julie's radiant smile on their wedding day. 35 years old, and suddenly alone in a Boston apartment that felt too big, too empty, too quiet. It had been 6 months since Julie's sudden cardiac arrest, 6 months of coming home to emptiness. 6 months of teaching history to teenagers at Brookline High School, maintaining a facade of normalcy while feeling anything but normal inside. "Damn it," Gavin whispered, kneeling carefully to retrieve the photo. His fingers trembled as he brushed glass fragments away from Julie's face. Her eyes still sparkled with the same light that had first captivated him 12 years ago at a faculty meeting. The same light that had extinguished without warning one ordinary Tuesday morning as she prepared for her day. His phone rang, startling him from his trance. The screen displayed his sister's name, Barbara. "Hey, Barb," he answered, his voice betraying his emotional state. "Gavin, are you okay?" Barbara's concern traveled clearly across the miles from Denver to Boston. "Just broke a picture frame. Julie's wedding photo." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. As a social worker who dealt with trauma daily, Barbara knew better than to offer empty platitudes. "I've been thinking about what you said last month," Gavin continued, surprising himself. "About fostering. After Julie died, Barbara had gently suggested that Gavin consider becoming a foster parent. You've always been amazing with kids, Gav, and sometimes helping someone else heal can help us heal too." "Really?" Barbara's voice lifted. "I thought you'd dismiss the idea." Gavin glanced around the apartment. The stack of essays he'd been half-heartedly grading, the takeout containers in the trash, the emptiness that seemed to press in from all sides. "I think I'm ready," he said. "I need to do something meaningful, Barb. I can't just exist like this anymore." Outside his window, Boston's autumn painted the trees in brilliant reds and golds, a stark contrast to the grayscale his life had become. Perhaps this was the first step toward finding color again. "I have a feeling this is exactly what you need, Gavin," Barbara said. "And who knows, maybe there's someone out there who needs you just as much." As they spoke about next steps and the certification process, Gavin felt something he hadn't experienced in months: purpose. A tiny flame flickering to life in the darkness. He couldn't have known then how a single photograph in another teenager's possession would soon connect their lives in ways neither could imagine. 3 months later, Gavin stood in his apartment's spare bedroom, which he'd transformed into a space for 15-year-old Sean Murphy. The walls, once bare, now displayed posters of bands Gavin had never heard of, and basketball players he vaguely recognized. The bookshelf held required reading for Sean's sophomore English class, alongside a few sci-fi novels Gavin had suggested. Gavin knocked gently on the half-open door. "Dinner in 15 minutes. Sean looked up from his homework, his expression guarded but less hostile than when he'd first arrived 2 weeks ago. "Thanks," he said simply. Progress, Gavin thought. Their conversations had evolved from one-word answers to occasional full sentences. Small victories. In the kitchen, Gavin prepared pasta with homemade sauce, a recipe Julie had perfected. The familiar motions were therapeutic, chopping basil and stirring the simmering tomatoes. He'd learned quickly that Sean actually ate vegetables, unlike many teens Gavin taught, which made meal planning easier. When Sean emerged from his room, he carried something Gavin hadn't seen before: a small, worn photograph with frayed edges. "That smells good," Sean commented, hovering near the counter rather than sitting immediately. "Thanks. It was my wife's recipe." Gavin had been honest with Sean about Julie from the beginning. Ms. Winters, Sean's caseworker, had emphasized the importance of authenticity. "Kids in the system have dealt with enough lies," she told him. "They can smell insincerity a mile away." Sean nodded, his fingers absently stroking the edge of the photo he held. "What's that?" Gavin asked casually, keeping his tone light as he drained the pasta. Sean hesitated, then placed the photo on the counter. My mum. It's the only picture I have of her. Gavin wiped his hands and carefully picked up the photograph. A young woman with auburn hair smiled at the camera, her eyes, remarkably similar to Sean's, crinkled at the corners. She wore a Colorado State University sweatshirt and stood against a backdrop of mountains. "She's beautiful," Gavin said honestly. "Yeah." Sean took the photo back, his expression conflicted. "She left when I was 3. Don't remember her much. Just have this." Gavin served the pasta, processing this information. Sean's file had mentioned a mother who'd abandoned him, leaving him with a father who later became unable to care for him due to substance abuse issues. After several temporary placements, Sean had entered the Massachusetts foster system. "Do you know where she is now?" Gavin asked. Sean shrugged, twirling pasta around his fork. "Dad always said she just took off. Couldn't handle being a mom, I guess." His attempt at nonchalance couldn't mask the hurt underlying his words. "I'm sorry, Sean." "It's whatever. Ancient history," Sean replied, but he carefully tucked the photo into his pocket before eating. That night, after Sean had gone to bed, Gavin sat in the living room grading papers. His phone lit up with a text from Barbara. "Flying in next weekend for that conference. Still okay to crash at your place?" Gavin smiled. Barbara's visit would be good for both him and Sean. His sister had a natural ability to connect with people, especially teens. Perhaps she could help bridge some of the gaps he still felt with Sean. He texted back, "Absolutely. Sean's looking forward to meeting his cool aunt." As he set the phone down, Gavin thought about the photograph. The woman's face lingered in his mind, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Something familiar about her smile, perhaps. He dismissed the thought and returned to his grading, unaware that the faded image would soon unravel a mystery neither he nor Sean was prepared for. Barbara Parker burst through the apartment door with her trademark energy, rolling suitcase in tow and arms already outstretched for a hug. "There's my favorite brother," she exclaimed, wrapping Gavin in an embrace. "I'm your only brother," he replied with the familiar retort they'd exchanged since childhood. Barbara laughed, then turned her attention to the teenager standing awkwardly in the living room doorway. "And you must be Sean. I've heard so much about you." Sean shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Hi." "Don't worry, all good things," Barbara winked, expertly diffusing the tension. "I hear you're killing it in world history." Sean glanced at Gavin, who shrugged with a smile. "What?" "It's true. You aced that last test on ancient civilizations." A hint of pride flickered across Sean's face. "It's not that hard when your foster dad is a history teacher who turns everything into a lesson." "He's been doing that since we were kids," Barbara stage whispered. "Once he made me memorize all the presidents while we were waiting in line for ice cream." The evening flowed more easily than Gavin had anticipated. Barbara had always possessed a gift for making people feel comfortable, a skill that served her well as a social worker, specializing in family reunification cases in Denver. After dinner, while Sean showered, Barbara helped Gavin with the dishes. "He's a great kid, Gav. Quiet, but I can see he's starting to trust you." Gavin nodded, relief evident in his expression. "It's been slow progress, but there are moments when I feel like we're really connecting." "That's how it works, brick by brick." Barbara handed him a plate to dry. "So, has he shared anything about his background?" "Not much beyond what was in his file, though he did show me a photograph of his mother. It's the only one he has." "That's significant. That he showed it to you, I mean." "I thought so too. It's clearly precious to him." When Sean returned to the living room, his hair still damp, he had the photograph in hand. He seemed to be contemplating something. "Your sister's cool," he said to Gavin, then turned to Barbara. "Gavin said you work with kids like me in Denver." Barbara nodded. "I do. I help families stay together when possible, or find new families when necessary." Sean hesitated, then extended the photograph toward her. "This is my mom. I know it's probably stupid, but I always wondered if someone like you might know how to find her." Barbara took the photo, and Gavin watched as her expression transformed from polite interest to shock. She stared at the image, then at Sean, then back at the photograph. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" Gavin and Sean asked simultaneously. Barbara looked up, her eyes wide. "I know her. This is Lisa Brennan. She was my roommate at Colorado State." The silence that filled the room was deafening. Sean froze, his face a complex mixture of disbelief, hope, and fear. "You knew my mom?" His voice cracked on the last word. Barbara nodded slowly. "We shared a dorm room for 2 years. We were close friends." She studied Sean's face with new understanding. "That's why you looked familiar to me. You have her eyes." Gavin watched his sister carefully. There was something in her expression beyond surprise. A sadness, a complication she hadn't yet voiced. "What happened to her?" Sean asked. The question he'd likely carried his entire life finally finding voice. "Why did she leave?" Barbara glanced at Gavin, a silent communication passing between siblings. She turned back to Sean, choosing her words carefully. "Sean, I don't think your mother abandoned you the way you might have been told. Lisa had struggles, serious mental health challenges that began in our junior year." The weight of this revelation hung in the air as Sean processed what this might mean, that the narrative he'd built his life around might not be the whole truth. The following morning, Sean sat at the kitchen table, untouched cereal growing soggy in his bowl. Barbara and Gavin exchanged concerned glances. "I still don't understand," Sean finally said. "If she didn't just leave because she didn't want me, then what happened?" Barbara sat across from him, her professional demeanor softened by genuine compassion. "Lisa was diagnosed with severe bipolar disorder with psychotic features during our junior year of college. It was difficult. Back then, mental health wasn't discussed as openly as it is now. But that was years before I was born," Sean pointed out. "Yes, after graduation we lost touch. I knew she had moved to Massachusetts for graduate school, but then she stopped responding to calls. It happens sometimes with old college friends, so I didn't think much of it." Barbara's expression conveyed her regret. "I had no idea she had a son." Gavin watched Sean carefully. The teenager's usual defensive posture had shifted to something more vulnerable, more open. "My dad never talked about her being sick. He just said she couldn't handle being a mom and took off." Barbara's lips tightened slightly. That might have been easier for him to accept or to explain to a child than the reality. Mental illness can be complicated, especially severe conditions that might include episodes where a person isn't fully in touch with reality. Sean pushed his cereal bowl away. "So you think she didn't leave on purpose? That she got sick again?" "It's possible," Barbara said gently. "I'd need to do some research to know for sure." Can you?" The directness of Sean's question surprised both adults. "Can you find out what happened to her?" Barbara looked at Gavin, who nodded subtly. This was beyond the typical foster-parent relationship, but Sean deserved answers if they could find them. "I'll try," Barbara promised. "I have colleagues in Massachusetts who can help navigate the systems here. But Sean," she added carefully, "we need to prepare for the possibility that the answers might be complicated or difficult." "My whole life has been complicated and difficult," Sean replied, with a maturity that made Gavin's heart ache. "Not knowing has been worse." Over the next 2 days, Barbara made dozens of calls, leveraging her professional connections. Gavin took Sean to school, trying to maintain normalcy while both were acutely aware of the search happening in parallel to their daily routine. On Sunday evening, hours before Barbara was scheduled to fly back to Denver, her persistent efforts yielded results. The three gathered in the living room as she explained what she'd discovered. Lisa was hospitalized for a severe psychotic episode approximately 12 years ago, Barbara began softly. "Based on the timeline, this would have been when you were around 3 years old, Sean." Sean nodded, his hands clasped tightly together. After stabilization, she was transferred to a long-term residential treatment facility. There's not much detail available due to privacy laws, but what I can tell you is that she's currently living in a supervised group home in Cedar Falls, about 3 hours from here. The information landed like a physical weight in the room. Lisa Brennan was alive. She was receiving treatment. She was only 3 hours away. Would she remember me? Sean asked, his voice barely audible. Barbara chose her words carefully. Mental illness affects everyone differently. Long-term conditions with psychotic features can sometimes impact memory, but many people maintain clear memories of significant life events and loved ones, even through serious illness. I want to see her, Sean stated, looking first at Barbara, then at Gavin. It wasn't a question or a request, but a declaration of intent. Gavin took a deep breath. We'll need to coordinate with Ms. Winters and the facility staff. There are protocols for situations like this. But you'll help me? The vulnerability in Sean's eyes was piercing. Yes, Gavin promised. We'll help you. Later that night, after Sean had gone to bed, Gavin and Barbara sat in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Are you sure about this? Barbara asked. It's going to be emotionally complex for everyone involved. Gavin thought about Julie, about loss and unanswered questions, about the pain of not getting to say goodbye. He deserves to know his story, Barb. All of it. Even the complicated parts. This goes beyond your responsibilities as a foster parent. Maybe, Gavin acknowledged, but it feels like the right thing to do. Barbara studied her brother's face. You care about him, not just as a responsibility. I do, Gavin admitted, more than I expected to. Just be careful, Gav, for both your sakes. As Barbara prepared to leave the next morning, she hugged Sean tightly. I'll be in touch about the next steps, and I'm just a phone call away any time. Sean nodded, his expression more open than Gavin had ever seen it. Thanks for finding her. Thank you for trusting us with your story, Barbara replied. After she departed, Gavin and Sean sat in a silence that felt both weighty and surprisingly comfortable. The photograph of Lisa Brennan lay on the coffee table between them, a bridge connecting past to present, questions to emerging answers. The drive to Cedar Falls stretched before them like an emotional gauntlet. Sean sat in the passenger seat, the worn photograph clutched in his hands. Gavin kept his eyes on the road, occasionally glancing at his foster son, whose anxiety manifested in tapping fingers and darting eyes. The past 3 weeks had been a flurry of preparation. Ms. Winters had helped navigate the complex bureaucracy of coordinating a supervised visit. Dr. Lowenstein, the clinical director at Riverside Haven where Lisa resided, had conducted preliminary conversations with both Sean and Lisa separately to ensure both were emotionally prepared for the reunion. She remembers you, Dr. Lowenstein had told Sean during their video call. Her memory has gaps, but she's never forgotten she has a son. Now, as they approached the final stretch of highway, Sean broke the silence. What if she doesn't like who I am now? Gavin considered his response carefully. She's your mother, Sean. She may not know all the details of who you've become, but that core connection, it matters. Did they tell her about my dad? About the foster homes? They shared the basics, Gavin confirmed, just like they shared the basics about her condition with us. Lisa's diagnosis, schizoaffective disorder with periodic psychotic episodes, had been explained to Sean in age-appropriate terms. Dr. Lowenstein had emphasized that while Lisa's condition was serious, the structured environment and consistent treatment at Riverside Haven had helped stabilize her condition significantly over the past several years. She's been asking about you for a long time, the doctor had explained, but her previous conditions of care didn't facilitate family reunification efforts. The facility appeared on the horizon, a cluster of modern buildings surrounded by gardens and walking paths. Nothing like the institutional image Sean had feared. This is nice, Sean observed quietly as they parked. It's a good place, Gavin agreed. Barbara checked their credentials thoroughly. Dr. Lowenstein met them in the reception area, a warm woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Sean, Gavin, welcome to Riverside Haven. She shook their hands. How was your drive? Long, Sean answered honestly. The doctor smiled. I imagine it felt that way. Are you ready to meet your mother? She's waiting in our family room. Sean took a deep breath and nodded. Gavin placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. I'll be right there with you, he assured him. The family room was designed for comfort. Soft couches, natural light streaming through large windows, artwork created by residents adorning the walls. And there, seated in an armchair by the window, was Lisa Brennan. She looked up as they entered. 12 years older than in Sean's photograph, her auburn hair now contained streaks of grey, but her eyes, Sean's eyes, remained the same. Sean? Her voice trembled with emotion. Sean froze, overwhelmed by the reality of the moment. Gavin kept his hand steady on the boy's shoulder, a silent anchor of support. It's me, Sean finally managed. Lisa stood slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She didn't rush forward as she might have wanted to, showing remarkable restraint and awareness of how overwhelming this moment must be for her son. You've grown so much, she said, tears welling in her eyes. The last time I saw you, you were just a little boy. I'm 15 now, Sean replied, his voice stronger. 15, Lisa repeated, as if trying to reconcile the mathematical reality of the years that had passed. Would it be okay if I hugged you? Sean glanced at Gavin, who nodded encouragingly. Then he stepped forward, allowing his mother to embrace him for the first time in 12 years. The moment was powerful in its simplicity, a circle closing, a wound beginning its long-delayed healing. As they sat down, Dr. Lowenstein positioned herself unobtrusively in the corner, present but giving them space. Gavin took a seat nearby, close enough to provide support but allowing Sean to lead the conversation. I kept your picture, Sean said, holding out the worn photograph. All this time. Lisa touched it gently, tears streaming freely now. I have pictures of you too. They're in my room. I never forgot you, Sean. Never. Not for one day. But you left, Sean said, the hurt of abandonment still raw despite all they now knew. Lisa's expression reflected deep pain and regret. I didn't leave willingly, Sean. I got very sick. My mind, it betrayed me. There were voices, confusion. I couldn't separate what was real from what wasn't. She looked at Dr. Lowenstein, who nodded supportively. Your father tried to help at first, Lisa continued, but my condition was severe, and he wasn't equipped to handle it. There was an incident. I don't remember it clearly, but I frightened you. After that, I was hospitalized. When I was stabilized enough to understand what had happened, they told me you were with your father, that you were safe, and that it was better for you if I focused on getting well. The pieces of Sean's fragmented history began to align. Dad never told me you were sick. He just said you left. That might have been easier for him to explain, Lisa said softly. Or maybe easier for him to believe. The truth is complicated and painful for everyone. As the conversation continued, Sean gradually relaxed. They shared stories, Lisa of Sean's early years, memories she'd held close through her darkest times. Sean of his life now, school, his interest in history, and his placement with Gavin. Thank you, Lisa said to Gavin during a quiet moment, for bringing him here, for caring for him. He's an exceptional young man, Gavin replied sincerely. You should be proud. I am, she said, looking at her son with unmistakable love. Every day, even when I couldn't be with him. As their visit approached its end, Sean asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Can I come back to visit again? I'd like that very much, Lisa answered, hope brightening her features. If it's something you want. Sean looked at Gavin, who nodded. We'll make it happen, he promised. As they prepared to leave, Lisa handed Sean a small package wrapped in tissue paper. This is for you, to help fill in some of the gaps. Inside was a journal, Lisa's writings and drawings from the years they'd been separated, notes she'd written to her son when she couldn't send them, memories she'd documented so they wouldn't be lost to her illness. So you'll know I never stopped loving you, she explained. even when I couldn't be there. On the drive back to Boston, Sean was quiet, processing the emotional weight of the day. The journal rested in his lap, unopened, a treasure to be explored in private when he was ready. "You okay?" Gavin asked as the city skyline appeared in the distance. Sean nodded. "I think so. It's a lot, but it helps. Knowing. Knowledge usually does," Gavin replied, "even when it's complicated." "She's not what I expected," Sean admitted. "She's real, not just a picture or a story anymore." As they pulled into the apartment parking lot, Sean turned to Gavin with unexpected clarity in his expression. "I want to keep visiting her, and I want to stay with you, if that's okay." The simple statement carried profound meaning, acknowledgement of both his reconnection with his mother and his growing bond with Gavin. "That's more than okay, Sean," Gavin answered, emotion tightening his throat. "That's exactly what I want too." Spring brought renewal to Boston, fresh leaves on the trees lining Commonwealth Avenue, tulips in the public garden, and a subtle but profound transformation within the walls of Gavin's apartment. 6 months had passed since their first visit to Riverside Haven, 6 months of bi-weekly visits to Cedar Falls, of Sean slowly rebuilding a relationship with his mother while simultaneously strengthening his connection with Gavin. 6 months of healing, understanding, and creating something new from the fragments of the past. Today marked a significant milestone. Gavin's formal adoption of Sean would be finalized at the family court. "A tie straight?" Gavin asked, adjusting his collar in the hallway mirror. Sean emerged from his bedroom in a button-down shirt and the new pants they'd purchased for the occasion. "Looks good. How about mine?" Gavin smiled, straightening the slightly crooked tie. "Perfect. You ready for this?" "Yeah," Sean replied with the quiet confidence that had gradually replaced his defensive shell. "More than ready." The adoption was Sean's idea, proposed 3 months earlier after a particularly meaningful visit with Lisa. Far from objecting to the arrangement, Lisa had supported it wholeheartedly. "You deserve stability, Sean," she'd said, holding her son's hand across the table in the family room. "Gavin can provide that in ways I can't right now." Her continued progress at Riverside Haven had been remarkable. Medication compliance, therapy, and the renewed connection with her son all contributing to her stability. But everyone, including Lisa herself, recognized that she wouldn't be able to provide full-time care for Sean before he reached adulthood. "This doesn't change that I'm your mother," she'd assured him. "Nothing can change that. But family comes in many forms, and Gavin, he's become family too." Oh, in the courthouse, Barbara sat in the front row, having flown in specifically for the occasion. Beside her was Ms. Winters, whose supportive guidance had been instrumental throughout the process. Dr. Lowenstein had helped arrange for Lisa to attend via video conference from Riverside Haven, a special accommodation the judge had approved given the unique circumstances. As the proceedings began, Gavin felt a strange sense of coming full circle. In the darkest period after losing Julie, he could never have imagined finding purpose and connection in becoming a father. Yet here he was, legally binding himself to a remarkable young man who had changed his life as profoundly as he had changed Sean's. The court recognizes this adoption as in the best interest of the minor child, the judge declared, signing the final documents. "Congratulations to you both." Applause filled the courtroom. On the video screen, Lisa wiped tears from her eyes, her smile radiant with a complex mixture of emotions. Joy for her son, gratitude toward Gavin, and perhaps a bittersweet acknowledgement of her own journey. Later that evening, after a celebration dinner with Barbara and calls to friends who had supported them throughout the process, Sean and Gavin sat in the living room. The apartment that had once felt too empty to Gavin now hummed with life and meaning. "I have something for you," Gavin said, retrieving a package from his desk drawer. Sean unwrapped it to find a handsome leather-bound photo album. Opening it, he discovered his treasured photograph of Lisa on the first page. The following pages contained new pictures, Sean and Lisa during their visits, Sean and Gavin at school events and around Boston, and one special group photo taken at Riverside Haven with all four of them, Sean, Gavin, Lisa, and Barbara. Our family album, Gavin explained. Unconventional maybe, but real. Sean ran his fingers over the images, each one representing a piece of his reclaimed history and newly constructed future. Mom's getting better, he said thoughtfully. Dr. Lowenstein says she might be able to transition to a less restrictive setting next year. That's wonderful news, Gavin replied. They had discussed the possibility of Lisa eventually moving closer to Boston, perhaps to a supervised apartment program that would allow for more frequent, less structured visits. She asked if we could help her look at options near here, Sean continued, so she could be closer. Of course we can, Gavin assured him. Whatever supports her continued progress. Sean closed the album, his expression reflective. You know, for years I thought I was abandoned because I wasn't wanted. I built this whole identity around being unwanted. Gavin listened, giving Sean the space to articulate this profound realization. But the truth was completely different, Sean continued. Mom never stopped wanting me. She just couldn't be with me because of her illness. And you... He looked directly at Gavin. You chose me. Both of you wanted me, just in different ways. You're very wanted, Sean, Gavin confirmed, emotion thickening his voice. Never doubt that. On the mantel, beside the repaired frame containing Julie's wedding photo, now stood a new frame, the group picture from Riverside Haven. Different pieces of Gavin's life, past and present, coexisting in harmony rather than conflict. I used to think healing meant forgetting, Gavin said, looking at Julie's smiling face. Now I understand it's about integration, bringing all the pieces together into something new. Sean nodded, understanding beyond his years. Like our family. Exactly like our family, Gavin agreed. Outside, spring rain began to fall softly, nourishing the soil where new growth was already emerging. Inside, in an apartment in Boston, an unconventional family built on understanding, truth, and genuine affection had taken root and flourished against all odds. If you enjoyed this journey of healing and found meaning in their story, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that touch hearts and remind us of the power of connection. Until next time, remember that family isn't always defined by blood, but by love, understanding, and the choice to be there for one another.